Yeah, that's a beautiful song, isn't it? Just a beautiful, beautiful, touching song. Wonderful. Another wonderful song by Karen Drucker. She's quite prolific in our New Thought movement with all of her music. If you don't have any of it, you can listen to a lot of it online and on YouTube. So very powerful, powerful, powerful music. So we are continuing our month of June and the wisdom of Winnie the Pooh. The wisdom of Winnie the Pooh. And remember, we've been talking about what is this story, and it's a story about a dumpy little bear that wanders around asking silly questions, making up songs and poems, and going through all sorts of adventures without ever accumulating any amount of intellectual knowledge or losing his simple-minded sense of happiness. And we thought that sounded pretty good, didn't we? Yeah. So in our first adventure, we followed Pooh and Piglet on their tracking of the woozles. And we said that woozles were probably in the snipe family and may not exactly exist, but that what they were doing was tracking themselves around the tree, around and around and around, and how we do that in our imaginations, and how we can track the woozle in our own mind, something made up that perhaps can lead us to something empowering and something positive and uplifting, but perhaps it can also drag us down into the negativity, into a false belief that does not support us. And we talked about the idea that the simple act of asking opens us to receive. And sometimes we just forget to ask, don't we? I don't know if you've had the experience I have, that just asking for prayer support seems to lift the burden. Just the act of asking opens us to that receptivity. And we talked about the cliche, I guess, that we talk about all the time here, let go and let God. And we expanded that by saying let go and let God flow. Because Spirit really can't do anything for us that Spirit can't do through us. And we are the ones that block it through our resistance, through our control, through our fear. So let go and let God flow. And then last week we met that sad little donkey named Eeyore and Owl, the wise but sometimes a little confused and disoriented wise guy, in the story of Eeyore Loses a Tail. And we saw our powerful creative process at work in this story, because Pooh made his declaration that he would find Eeyore's tail, but we realized through the story that it was really about that deeper meaning of Pooh's why. Why is it that we want the manifestation that we want? His motivation was all about love. It was all about kindness. It was all about his friend Eeyore. It wasn't for some reward or some personal gain for himself. It was simply the fact that his friend lost his tail and he was going to find it for him because he was sad. So we talked about getting underneath our own desires and looking at the consciousness below it and seeking deeper in what it is that our soul is seeking that we have interpreted as the manifestation of something in the material. And getting below that and asking that question, what is it in the deeper conscious realms that I'm truly, truly seeking here? And our practice last week was to do that, to go into the contemplation and the meditative state and ask and seek, what is the deeper thing that I'm looking for here? And we said, change your thinking, change your life, our Ernest Holmes tagline. And we took that a little deeper too and said, change your thinking and your life will change. Your life will change if you change your thinking. Many of us have had that experience through the practices in this teaching. So today we're going to move on to another story of Kanga and Baby Roo come to the forest. Kanga and Baby Roo. So we're meeting some new characters. And in the science of mind and in many of our spiritual teachings today, we hear a lot about oneness, don't we? We hear a lot about oneness, and it's becoming more mainstream, not only in the spiritual communities and the spiritual conversations, but science is beginning to prove this up through this idea of everything being connected in the physical realm. And as our technological gains, our technology gains continue, and we can see life at finer and finer levels, we begin to see this idea of the quantum. And in the quantum is where scientists are seeing boundaries dissolve. Boundaries dissolve, and we're seeing that it's more about atoms and molecules and quarks and all those sorts of things that are truly just all interconnected. And that's what we're made up of, so we're all interconnected, right? We're all interconnected. And we have recently witnessed this idea of interconnection in the news across our country, across our world, through the Orlando tragedy that happened last weekend. And we have seen this week people coming together, being inspired, mobilized, getting involved, making a difference. We have seen a uniting of many more voices for balance in our laws and our rules and our human rights. So we've seen this coming together, this connectivity of the human souls saying enough. Enough. We also experience this interconnectedness sometimes when we're in large groups, perhaps a concert where the music is so beautiful and we're all experiencing it and we're feeling that connection with everyone that's there. I attended the Parliament of World Religions last October and felt that connection. We were all there as one in a unity, even though we were from very diverse religious organizations. There was one. There was one message. We were connected in that wholeness. And we feel it here, I think, at Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living in our own connectedness here. We've come together to create this community. We sing the song each Sunday, Come Together. We've done that and connected with each other as community, much like a family in many circumstances. But we are connected here as well. And in our everyday life, we often see this through things called coincidences or serendipitous encounters, where we're thinking about a friend and they call out of the blue, right? Out of the blue. So all of these are indications of the interconnectivity of life, of us, of each of us, which leads me to our tale today of Kanga and Roo. Nobody seemed to know where they came from. But there they were, in the forest, Kanga and baby Roo. And when Pooh asked Christopher Robin, how did they come here? Christopher Robin said, in the usual way, you know. And Pooh, who didn't know, said, oh. And he nodded his head twice. In the usual way, ah. And then he went to call upon his friend Piglet to see what he thought about it. And at Piglet's house, he found Rabbit. So they all talked about it together. What I don't like about this, said Rabbit, here we are, and suddenly all of us in the forest, we wake up one morning and what do we find? We find a strange animal among us, an animal whom we had never even heard of, an animal who carries her family about in a pocket. Suppose I carried my family about in a pocket. How many pockets would I need? Piglet said, the question is, what are we to do about Kanga? The best way, said Rabbit, would be this. The best way would be to steal baby Roo and hide him. And then when Kanga says, where's baby Roo? We say, aha! We say, aha, so that Kanga knows that we know where baby Roo is. Aha means, we'll tell you where baby Roo is if you promise to go away from the forest forever and never come back. Now, don't talk, I have to think. There's just this one thing, said Piglet. I was talking to Christopher Robin, and he said that a Kanga is generally regarded as one of the fierce animals, in which case, aha is perhaps a foolish thing to say. Piglet, said Rabbit, you haven't any pluck. It's hard to be brave when you are only a very small animal. Rabbit, who had begun to write very busily, looked up and said, it is because you are a very small animal that you will be useful to this adventure. Piglet was so excited at the idea of being useful that he forgot to be frightened anymore. What about me, said Pooh. Is there any way I can be useful? Never mind, Pooh, said Piglet. Another time, perhaps. Without Pooh, said Rabbit, the adventure would be impossible. Oh, said Piglet, trying not to look disappointed. But Pooh went into the corner of the room and said proudly to himself, impossible without me. I'm that sort of bear. Have you ever been in one of these groupthink situations? Because isn't that kind of what that is? Isn't that kind of what that is? You've got one person of power, the rabbit, who's saying, this is what we need to do. Here's the plan. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. We're going to do it this way, and we're going to start right now. Ever been in one of those meetings? Yeah. Or a group, a social group maybe, that takes on that tenor. Yeah. I think we've all been there. We've all been there. And the effect of groupthink, besides being dangerous, if a less than honorable person or a rabbit happens to take the lead, what can happen? It discourages creativity for sure, and individual responsibility. Because then it's really easy to say, well, they said I had to do, they made me, right? Yeah, it's easy to get into that and this idea of group think. And then how often do others want us to compromise our commitments to ourselves, our values, our beliefs? Has that ever happened to you? Why would we ever surrender our authority, our creativity? It happened in my office last week, an interesting scenario. We have a piece of property, and we've been approached by a gentleman that's a developer who wants to joint venture with us and partner with us. And during the meeting, there were 3 from our team and 2 from his team, and we were discussing how this relationship might possibly work. And one of the suggestions that they made was that because of the particular type of financing that they were suggesting that we do, that we might want to create 2 pro formas, one for our internal use and one for the lender's use. Yeah, that was the reaction from our side of the table. It was like, okay, meeting is over. Yeah, so it was really interesting to have that conversation right there. Yeah, right there. So it opened up a dialogue, needless to say. More on that to follow. So let's move on. Now listen, all of you, Rabbit said when he finished writing and he began reading, the plan to capture Baby Roo. So now Rabbit has crafted a plan. And the plan is basically, Kanga runs faster than any of us, including me. Now, this is a big old jackrabbit, and they can run pretty quick, we know, right? But the kangaroo can run a lot quicker, and he realizes this. So he says, because of that, and the fact that the kangaroo, mama, never takes her eyes off of the baby Roo, we have got to figure out how to make this switch and get baby Roo. And we're going to have to distract mama in order to get the baby. And what we're going to do is we're going to substitute Piglet for Roo. So his plan is Pooh is going to distract Kanga while Piglet jumps in her pouch and Rabbit runs off with Roo. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Yes, it sounds absolutely brilliant. So that's their plan. That's what they've hatched. Well, Rabbit reads this out for everybody, and Piglet is listening to this plan. Now, Piglet realizes he's the decoy. He's the decoy. And he's thinking about this plan of the whole aha thing. Remember that part? And he's going, what about afterwards? And he goes, what do you mean afterwards? When we all say aha. And he goes, yes, we'll all say aha. And he goes, all of us? And he says, yeah, all of us. So you'll all be there, right? Yes, we'll all be there. We'll all say, aha. Okay, then that'll be okay. That'll be okay. And then Pooh says, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, you're supposed to be distracting Kanga. You've got to distract her with a story or something. I can tell her some poetry. It's like, perfect, tell her poetry. So now we've got our distractions and our decoys going. Do we ever have those on our journey, on our path? Any distractions, any decoys, anything, any rabbits or squirrels we're chasing down the path and not really paying attention to what we have established as our goal, our mission? Yeah, it happens a lot, doesn't it? It's easy to get distracted over shiny things sometimes, right? We kind of say that. I tease Reverend Catherine McDowell all the time about being distracted about, we say squirrels. I'm like, squirrel, go chase that one. Squirrel, go chase that one. Sure we do. So this is how it begins, the grand plan, the adventure, a scheme. And we get caught up in it. We can get distracted by the plan, can't we? And forget the real purpose because the plan takes on such beauty or eloquence. Or anybody ever have a strategic plan in their company? You spend hours, days, all of everybody coming together and creating a strategic plan. It goes up on the wall. We point to it occasionally. Are we distracted by the planning as opposed to the actual doing of the plan? Does that happen in anybody else's office besides mine? I mean, am I the only one? Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? We'll have this strategic plan. We'll all be on the same page. We'll live by it. Yeah. So in this situation, we've got this whole big plan, but they've not thought beyond too much of the plan, have they? They haven't thought about, how's Kanga going to react when she discovers Roo is not there and it's Piglet? What's going to happen to baby Roo when Rabbit grabs it? What's going to happen with Christopher Robin? Is he going to be angry? What's going to happen when Rabbit's gone and Piglet's in the pouch and there stands Pooh? They haven't thought through any of this. What happens when Rabbit's got baby Roo? It's a baby. Does Rabbit know how to take care of a baby? Okay, so they haven't thought through it, and sometimes we get caught up in that. So again, it's our creative process in play. What is the underlying belief? What is the underlying want? What is the underlying desire that Rabbit is creating this plan from? Kind of fear, isn't it? Fear of the other, the strange animal. Get rid of them. I want my forest back. Any of that sound familiar? Yeah. All right. Kanga and Roo were spending a quiet afternoon in a sandy part of the forest, and baby Roo was practicing very small jumps in the sand, falling down mouse holes and climbing out of them again. And Kanga was fidgeting about and saying, "Just one more jump, dear, and then we must go home." All you moms know how that is. Get the kids off the playground, right? One more slide and let's go. And at that very moment, here comes Pooh, wandering up the hill, right? And they're all greeting each other. Hey, Kanga, hey, Pooh, hey, Roo, how's it going? There's no animosity there. And then here comes Piglet and Rabbit, and everybody's greeting each other. And Kanga continues, "Roo, come on, let's go. It's time to go home. Come on, Roo, let's go home." And Pooh's trying to start up a conversation. "Kanga, do you like poetry?" "No, not really." "Well, I was thinking of a little poem as I was coming up the hill, and I'd like to share it with you." "Roo, come on." She's totally distracted, right? But she's paying attention to Roo completely. So Rabbit is now, nudging Pooh, going, "Come on, let's get on with this. Let's get on with this." So Pooh wants to recite his poem called "Lines Written by a Bear of Very Little Brain." So he's going through this and he's describing Monday. And then as he was moving to Tuesday, Kanga just flat interrupts him. And she goes, "Oh, yes, isn't that lovely? One more jump, Roo, and then we really must be going. We must be going." So Rabbit is positively beside himself. "Pooh, come on." So Pooh improvises and he says, "Okay, Kanga, speaking of poetry, look at that beautiful tree behind you. Look at that beautiful tree behind you. And look at that bird." And then Piglet chimes in and Rabbit chimes in, and they're all trying to get Kanga to look at the tree. Kanga's not looking at the tree. She's watching Roo. And Then they start talking about the bird. Well, look at the bird in the tree. Or is it a fish? Is it a fish in the tree? So they're trying to do all the distractions, right? And this continues until finally Kanga turns. And as she does, Rabbit shouts out, "In you go, Roo!" Piglet jumps in. Rabbit grabs Roo and leaps away. Kanga turns back around. She goes, "Roo, everything okay?" Piglet squeaks, "Mm-hmm." And there you have it. Now they've done it. Roo's been kidnapped. Piglet's in the pouch. "Why, where's Rabbit?" said Kanga. "Where did Rabbit go?" And Winnie the Pooh says, "Oh, Rabbit had to go somewhere. He just remembered something. And Piglet too. Piglet had to leave too. Yes, that Piglet had to leave too." And Kanga goes, "Okay, great. We're going to go home. See ya. Goodbye." And she leaps away and leaves Pooh standing there. But of course, when Kanga arrives home and unbuttons her pocket, she saw what had happened. Just for a moment, she thought she was frightened. And then she knew she wasn't. And then she knew she wasn't, for she felt quite sure that Christopher Robin could never let any harm happen to Roo. So she said to herself, "If they're having a joke with me, I'm going to have a joke with them." Mama Kanga's smart mama, isn't she? She's a very smart mama. Imagine had she gone into rage or fear or anger in that moment. She could have hurt Piglet. She could have gone after Pooh. She could have gone after Rabbit. She could have done a lot of things in her reaction there, couldn't she? But she didn't. Because she remembered her Christopher Robin would never let any harm come to her Roo. Do you have that faith? Do you have that trust? Are you quite sure when life throws you a curveball, when something unexpected shows up? Sure, we're all going to have a moment when we think we might be frightened. But in that moment, we have choice, don't we? In that moment, we have choice. For she felt quite sure that Christopher Robin would let no harm come. We talked last time about who's our Christopher Robin, who's our go-to. Could it possibly be Spirit? Could it possibly be God? Do you have that level of knowing? Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind, says, as we recognize our oneness with infinite intelligence, we are set free from uncertainty and pain. We are set free from uncertainty and fear when we recognize our oneness with infinite intelligence. Well, now here's Piglet in Roo's home, and Roo knows it's Piglet, but she's going to play a joke. So she treats him as Roo. "Roo, dear, it's time for a bath. I think tonight will be a cold bath. Yes, you'll love a cold bath, won't you, dear?" And Piglet is going, "Uh-huh, uh-huh." And nothing's happening, of course, because none of his friends are there. It's just him, his biggest fear. Good manifester. So he's trying to convince Kanga that he's Piglet and not Roo, and she's having none of it. She's going, "Roo, dear." So she puts him in the bath, she scrubs him down, she dries him off, and he's screaming the whole time, "But I'm Piglet, I'm not Roo." Well, about that time, there's a knock on the door. It's Christopher Robin, of course. And Piglet says, "Christopher Robin, please tell her I'm not Roo, I'm Piglet." And he says, "No, you're not Roo. I just saw Roo having a great time over at Rabbit's house." And Kanga goes, "Really? Imagine that. Imagine that." But then Christopher Robin goes, "I'm not sure you're Piglet either. Piglet's a totally different color than you are, because he's so clean." So they have a little conversation, and Piglet sees the doors open, and he decides it's time for him to go. So he goes running home as fast as his little legs will carry him, and about 100 yards from his house, he just stops, puts the brakes on, lays down, and rolls all the way home to get his color back. Get his color back. So Kanga and Roo stayed in the forest, and every Tuesday, Roo spent the day with his great friend Rabbit, and every Tuesday, Kanga spent the day with her great friend Pooh, teaching him how to jump. And every Tuesday, Piglet spent the day with his great friend Christopher Robin. So they were all happy once again, in the forest. So that's our story. It ends well, even though it had a really goofy plot. It ends very well for everyone, as all these stories, of course, do. But it looks at some very human emotions and conditions, doesn't it? It looks at some very, very ideas, and when things show up different for us, when things pop up that we're not expecting, that are not in our normal perception, the way that we see the world, like a kangaroo in the forest. That's different, right? If you're not used to seeing kangaroos. And then how Rabbit and Piglet react from their fear, wanting to exclude, wanting to get rid of, make it go away. It's not like us. We don't know what it is. It's a strange animal. And we again see this splashed across our media screen every day. Us versus them. Them being those that have a different belief, a different religion, look different, different colored skin, different sexual preference, different ideas, different age, different politics. We're seeing a lot of that today, aren't we? Different politics, different political views, different beliefs. We see that a lot. And our reality is shaped by how we view it. We talked about that a few months ago. And our perspective, our worldview, is the filters, those self-imposed blinders that we have all designed, we all wear, is our blinders. This is how it is. You know, we used to think the world was flat, didn't we? We all had our blinders, and if anybody tried to say otherwise, they were persecuted. And then we talked how consciousness changes our planet, and we've talked about the idea of slavery, and it took a civil war to end that. We talked about women's voting rights and how much persecution there was of women, of being imprisoned, tortured, civil rights in the 60s, the persecution, the murders, the torture, the riots that occurred. All of these things are these upheavals in consciousness. It was okay until it wasn't. And unfortunately, we haven't figured out yet how to effectuate change on our planet without fighting about it. We haven't figured that out yet. And we've just witnessed it again, where we think we have to fight about it. And yet we're starting to see maybe a little different way. There was a conversation on Friday in Washington about maybe a small opening into making some adjustments in our weapons of choice. There's a small conversation starting. There are peaceful protests coming. There's an outpouring of love. Could this be that which ushers in change in a peaceful way? That is my hope, my prayer, my dream, that is the case. That is the case. Clashing perspectives, closed-minded hatred. Those are the things that stop the creative process. We said let go and let God flow. God can't flow when we stop and block all that through our closed-mindedness, through our hatred. And we have the privilege and the opportunity in this community, because of the teaching, because of the conscious awareness that we have, to be a part of that change, to be a part of what lifts that positive change, to what moves evolution up in more of a positive way. We have the consciousness. We have the tools. And I believe it was Mark Twain who said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness." and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of earth all of one's lifetime. We heard that quote last week from Winnie the Pooh, didn't we? Can't hang out in your corner of the forest and expect people to come to you. You got to get out. You got to get out. And that's what Twain's saying. Because once we meet our adversary, once we meet them, they take on a little more humanness, don't they? We can begin to see the love or the light within them. We can begin to experience their soul. And once we're aware of our own limited perspectives, once we're aware of our own blinders, then we can choose how we wish to show up in the world, how we wish to participate in it, how we wish to be a change that contributes to a world that works for everyone. Being consciously aware of our moment-by-moment thoughts and decisions and how we react and behave in the world. So it's through this avenue of remembering our oneness that we can gain tolerance and inclusivity. It's through the idea and the avenue of oneness. And then we no longer worry about them because it simply becomes we. It simply becomes we. So I want to wrap up today with our pearls of wisdom, which I'm sharing with Winnie as Winnie the Pooh's pearls of wisdom. And they're both from Winnie today. And he says, just because an animal is large, it doesn't mean it doesn't want kindness. However big Tigger seems to be, remember that he wants as much kindness as Roo. And we can easily forget this with the rough and the tumble, the unrefined and less fortunate. That kindness and love are just as much desired by them as by babies and kittens and puppies and all those soft and squishy things that make us go, aww. My ex-husband used to say, everybody just wants to be loved. And that stuck with me because I think it's just such a very true statement. Everybody just wants to be loved. No matter what they're saying or doing, we just want to be loved. And our second is the things that make me different are the things that make me. And the things that make you different from me make you, that make us individualized. And when you can remember that about me, and I can remember that about you, guess what? We can begin to work together. We can begin to be in the one because we recognize the diversity in the wholeness, in the oneness. It's a wonderful reminder that we're each unique and special, individualized expressions. And that we're all to be embraced on this planet. It's kind of like Play-Doh. You can make a million different shapes out of Play-Doh, can't you? It's still Play-Doh. It's kind of like us. A million different shapes, different colors, different ways to be. Still Play-Doh. Still the same stuff. So my invitation to you this week into practice with this is something that I have been practicing, and I want to share it with you. Try it on, see if it works. If it does, great, and if it doesn't, we'll try something else. So the first step is to consciously look for someone or something, locally, personally, globally, that creates fear or an awareness in you of the other, of them. Now, there's lots of opportunities on the news, both the local news, the national news, the international news, to find examples of this that can hit our buttons, that can be specific things for us. It can be law enforcement, it can be government, it can be politics, it can be animals, it can be food, it can be in a relationship, in a conversation, it can be anything, right? Because we've all got our buttons that push us. We've all got our buttons. Something that makes us feel separate. And then notice your feelings, emotions, beliefs, and thoughts around this. Be honest with yourself. How do you feel? Strong emotions, sadness. How do you feel in that moment? And then I invite you into the stillness for at least 5 minutes a day to be with it, to focus on oneness and see if you can move your awareness to the possibility of one life in this situation or with this person. I'm going to go back to my example of the integrity question, the honesty question, and the two pro formas. Because when I took that into this practice, it's like, okay, how I feel about that is insulted, offended, how dare they, that's not right, that's not being honest, that's not the right thing to do, we're not going to do it. Push away, separation, let it go. So that's how I feel about that. That's how I feel about that. Now, how can I take that to oneness? Why was he saying that? Why would they suggest that? Oh, fear. Fear of not being successful in the project if they did it the other way. Resistance to the rules of the lending process that require certain things that maybe they're illogical. And maybe that it wasn't going to turn out exactly the way that it could turn out as beneficial if he did it the other way. Oh, resistance to that. And maybe fear and lack consciousness because it wasn't going to make as much money if we did it the right way or the correct way or the one pro forma way than the two pro forma way. There was more money to be made. Ah, lack consciousness. Okay, I see where he's coming from. I have felt those things. I have felt that I've been exposed to policies and processes that were illogical and didn't make sense, that were binding. I felt lack. I felt fear. Here is this voice across this table speaking universal awareness. I'm in the one now. I'm in the one with him. Because I'm not resisting him. I'm experiencing what he's saying is, oh, where is that me? Where have I thought, felt, been that in my life? It's a shift. When we can go through a process and take ourselves into that deeper awareness. I have no animosity toward that man. None whatsoever. You know, he was doing the best he could in the moment. Speaking what he thought was going to be most beneficial to the team and the project, not realizing that it would be so highly offensive, I hate to use that word, offensive to the team that he was trying to romance and have a relationship with. So it was a quite interesting experience. So I invite you into this process and notice if at the end of the week after trying this, if you feel differently. I certainly do. I certainly do. What I've come to realize after doing the process is that it's not the gentleman that brought us the deal that actually even said that. It was his partner that he brought in that was going to be the capital partner. And that man has drifted away. He's not even part of the deal anymore. So those things that don't resonate with us do fall away. They do fall away. If we but don't cling to them, right? We can't cling to them. So I believe what Ernest Holmes said, as we recognize our oneness with infinite intelligence, we are set free from the uncertainty and pain. We are set free from the uncertainty and fear. When we can recognize our oneness in the infinite intelligence, we are one with everyone. There is no them. So I invite you at this time to join me in prayer as we anchor this message today. So as we go within, we do recognize that there is only infinite intelligence. There is only the one. There is only one power, one presence, one life, one mind. And that power and presence is God, infinite intelligence, the divine, spirit, source, presence, essence, whatever it is that you call it, that resonates in your heart. All of it is here now present in this room, in, through, and as each one of us, for we are in it. It is in us. We are one, connected to each other and everything in the universe. There are no boundaries. And remembering that remembering that interconnectedness. I speak my word this day for and about each of us here in this room, for each and every one in Florida, in Orlando that was in that nightclub, each and every one that made their transition, those that are healing, those of us that are healing, our entire planet has been scarred by this. And I simply speak a word of blessing on all of us for that peace, that healing, to find the harmony, to find the oneness, to recognize that we have a powerful opportunity and conscious awareness to move this issue into that higher realm of spirit. I also speak a word of blessing on all of our firefighters fighting the fires in Arizona and other places in the West, knowing that they are receiving everything that they need to support them in extinguishing these damaging fires. And I speak the word also for each and every one here this day that has anything on their heart that they are seeking prayer support around, knowing that as they think about that desire in this moment, that we lift that into the divine light of healing, of wisdom, of prosperity, of intelligence, whatever the need might be. Just knowing that it is made manifest here now. So it is with great gratitude that I give thanks for the manifestation of this prayer, for the outpicturing of it in each and every one of our lives, for the truth that has been spoken here today. And I release this into the action of law, knowing that it's done, knowing that it's already made so, and we simply await its manifestation in form. And we anchor this together by saying, and so it is.